Sorry. Hello. My name is Zach, and I'm going to do a song that I started coming up with last week. I was going to do another song, but I thought since this is about peace and this is a very important event, I should make a particular song for this particular event. So the song is called I Come in Peace. It's just about, it's a story about the things that we face as human rights defenders and, activists in general and student activists in particular. Arrests, torture, things that I've gone through myself in Zimbabwe, where I was a student leader fighting, I don't know if I should use the term fighting since this is a peace event, but fighting peacefully fighting one of the most brutal dictators this world has ever seen, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. So I don't want you to get confused as I sing. I'm going to be using two terms that sound similar, peace and peace. Peace is a gun. It's like slang, like a piece. So I'm going to be talking about peace and peace, so don't get confused. Okay, you can give me the beat now. Check it. Listen. I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they own my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Look, I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they own my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Police came to pick me up, yeah, they wanna pick me up. I criticize the government, so they wanna beat me up. I'm speaking out, they don't want me speaking out. They want me to conform, now they don't want me sticking out. I'm thinking now, what is it I did wrong? Lift me off the ground, now they got me kicking out. Throw me in the car, ain't no way I'm sneaking out. They got me in cuffs, look, my mama is freaking out. Arrest us when we speak, raid our houses when we sleep. You put poison when we eat, you be spying when we meet. We have elections but you cheat, so we come out on the street. But you shoot us and you blame us, you don't want us on our feet. What a can of tanks, anti-riot cops throwing tear gas versus peaceful people on the street just holding placards, rubber bullets, tanks, anti-riot cops wielding truncheons, beating hungry people on the street while you're building mansions. I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they on my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Look, I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they on my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Look, I ain't scared of you because kill the man, you can't kill the cause. Punish silence us by breaking jaws. We're speaking out, not breaking laws. Unfair courts, I lose the case. But even if I never taste freedom again, don't think you won. Someone else will take my place. I mean you're chains in court, but you could never chain a thought. Oppressing, suppressing people like you do it for sport. Being arrested is unpleasant, it pains a lot, but it doesn't stop the people, doesn't change a lot. Beat the people till they numb, they no longer feel your arrest and your torture and the blood you spill. Now the people never ever gonna stop until their mission is fulfilled. Your jails will overfill. I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they on my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Look, I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they on my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists. Look, I come in peace, I come in peace. Ain't got no gun, ain't got no peace. Look, I see your cuffs, they on my wrists. My palms are open, unclench your fists.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the announcement of the Student Peace Prize 2019. And thank you, Zakaria, for your performance. Zakaria is a former student leader from Zimbabwe who is currently in Norway as on a student at risk scholarship. He is studying his master in Bergen at public administration. Among many other things, Zachariah is a poet, a DJ, and a hip-hop artist. He sings about his life as or under the regime of one of the most brutal dictators, Robert Mugabe. He sings about democracy, freedom, and human rights. My name is Kajsa Linnea Hagfors, and I am the leader of the student organization and newspaper Samfunnsviteren at the University of Oslo. I will be the host of this evening. And the first speaker of tonight is Ingeborg Albert Rikem. She is the leader of the Student Peace Prize, and she has for this past year been leading the Student Peace Prize as well as being in the board of ISFIT, the International Student Festival in Trondheim. The Student Peace Prize is given out every second year to a student or to a student organization on behalf of all students of Norway. And it is given out in cooperation with SAIH, the Norwegian Students and Academics of the International Assistance Fund, and NSO, the National Union of Norwegian Students. Please welcome Ingeborg to the stage.
Good evening, everyone, and once again, welcome to the announcement of the Student Peace Prize winner 2019. It is so great to see that so many of you have taken the time to come here tonight to celebrate student activism with us. For the past year, the Student Peace Prize has taken over my head and heart, so I'm very happy to see that you are all with me with the Student Peace Prize. It can be hard sometimes to understand the conflicts in the world, and also to understand what one can do to change them. But here we all are together with the Student Peace Prize winner. We are the lucky ones, the ones sitting in this room. And it can sometimes be hard to fully understand what that means. Because every day we are met with a media storm about a new crisis or about an escalation of conflicts. And every day there are new deaths, there are new numbers. But behind those numbers, there are people. There are people suffering. There are men, there are women, there are children, there are students. But there are also people fighting. There are people who are never giving up that they can change the world. Like Ayat Al-Kormusi said, she's the Student Peace Prize winner of 2015. I must tell what is happening so the world can see that the regime violates human rights. If they put me in jail, it will only harm them. I had the honor of meeting Ayat during the ISFIT festival in 2017. I met her when I was waiting for the bus at NTNU. She was also waiting for the bus. I recognized her. I walked up to her, and I told her that I was a volunteer for the Student Peace Prize. We then started talking, and we started talking about the bad weather, of course. We talked about how the buses are always late in Trondheim. And then, of course, we started talking about her. She told me how she had been kidnapped and imprisoned for many months without her family and friends knowing where she was, or if she was even alive. She told me about how she was tortured, how she would stand in a room for days without barely sleeping. She told me that she was raped, and she told me that she was dehumanized. All of this happened to her because at the age of 20, she recited a poem, a freedom poem, in the town square of the capital of Bahrain. She, in this poem, criticized the king of Bahrain and his brutal rule, how Bahrain has no human rights and no democracy. And it's students like Ayat who gives hope to a hopeless situation. They fight for change with measures, even with peaceful measures, even when they're met with brutal police. When they are met with tear gas and they're met with guns, They answer with fight songs. They answer with poems. And they answer with a strong belief. A belief in a better society and a belief in freedom. Students are losing their right to study. They are unjustifiably imprisoned, and they're tortured by the governments. And why are they so desperately trying to stop them? Why are their voices being suppressed? I believe this is because they are so inspiring to other people. They are fighting for a change that shakes the foundation that the suppressors build upon. By standing up, by demanding change, and believing in a better tomorrow, the students show that they're not only the future leaders, they are the leaders of today. Since 1999, the Student Peace Prize has strived to recognize these students and their fight for a better future. On behalf of all the students of Norway, 10 brave students and student organizations have been awarded the Student Peace Prize for their work for peace, democracy, and human rights. These are rights that we in Norway take for granted. But these are also rights that students all around the world has to fight for every single day. They have to sacrifice their future and sacrifice their families for these rights. 20 years has passed since the first winner of the Student Peace Prize was announced. 20 years ago, Antero Benedito da Silva from East-Timor, he was announced as the winner. He won because of his non-violent methods to make East-Timor independence from the brutal Indonesian occupation. 3 years after he received the prize in 2002, East-Timor gained their independence. Antero's fight and the students' fight was not in vain. Since then, we've had 10 laureates, from Iran, from West Sahara, from Burma, from Libya, and more. And tonight we will announce the 11th winner. Tonight we celebrate all the students fighting for a change and show that we are fighting with them. We are standing with them, and their fights are not in vain, and they are definitely not unseen. Students play such a vital role in the societies today, and they play an even bigger role in changing the societies. Students are the first one to take to the streets and demand change in the name of peace, democracy, and human rights. But they are also the first ones to be forgotten. That's why we are here tonight, because these students are not to be forgotten, and they are not to be unseen. We students, we are naive, we are optimistic, and we are curious. And in a way, we still have our childish dreams. We are loud, we break limits, and we do not want to be ignored. We deserve a voice, a loud voice, and we deserve a seat at the table. Students and young people are the future, and there cannot be peace if the students and youth are ignored in the peace processes. Tonight we are gathered here, celebrating the students that are standing up, who march and tremble the very foundation of suppressors. We are gathered to show that people and students fighting for a change are not alone. We share their passion for a better tomorrow for all of us, and that we, the students, we matter. I'd like to end with another quote from Ayad al-Qamousi. Regimes that violate human rights fear people with education. Therefore, I recommend all young people in countries without democracies to get an education and use it to fight for their rights. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And I hope that when you learn more about the laureate, you will see the importance of their work, and then we can together stand and make a better future for us all. Thank you.
A well-deserved applause to Ingeborg. Thank you. The next speaker out is Beate Øgård. She is the president of SAIH, and she is also the chair of the Student Peace Prize. The Student Peace Committee, The Peace Committee receives a report from the nominee committee, who has narrowed down all the nominations to 6 final nominees. This report is used to make the final decision on who wins the student prize. The committee consists of 4 student representatives appointed by NSO and 4 experts appointed by the Secretariat. SAIH leader Beate Øgård is in charge of the final committee meeting. SAIH works in international solidarity with students and academics globally in their fight for higher education and academic freedom. Tonight, she will announce the winner and justify the decision made by the committee. Please welcome Beate Øgård.
Protection of human rights and democracy. That should be the rules that govern the world. But unfortunately, we know that many in power feel threatened by free speech. And they fear the power that lies within students. And this isn't so peculiar when we are reminded of all the significant changes that students have led throughout history. The 1968 student uprising, the 1989 Tiananmen Square protest in China, how students were leading in front during the Arab Spring in 2011. These are only a few, and there are many more examples to mention. Students who are leading a way for a better society to live in. And all over the world, students are still in the forefront, fighting a non-violent struggle for human rights, peace, and democracy. And many of them are risking their lives and their own security for what they believe in. Asking critical questions can be dangerous. It is with great honor that I stand before you here tonight, just about to announce the winner of the 11th Student Peace Prize. I've had the pleasure of chairing the Student Peace Prize Committee this year. And the Peace Committee has consisted of the following members: Torunn Tryggestad, Svein Mollekleiv, Bjørnar Moxnes, Gro Lindstad, Rebekka Ringholm, Jone Tovåg, Håkon Randgang Michaelsen, and Kai Steffen Østensen. So on behalf of all students in Norway, I am proud to announce that the Peace Committee has decided that the Student Peace Prize 2019 will be awarded to Fasiya Hassan and her non-violent struggle for equal access for higher education, and for her leading role in the Feast Must Fall student movement in South Africa. Okay, Fasiya Hassan, she is a strong advocate for critical thinking and an important voice in the fight against inequality in South Africa. As a young Muslim woman and a representative of the first generation that grew up after the fall of apartheid in 1994, she has emerged as a prominent leader. The student movement, Feast Must Fall, started in 2015. Okay, I will call her back. The student movement, Feast Must Fall, started in 2015 as a response to an increase in tuition fees at South African universities. And the movement has an overall goal of ensuring equal access to higher education, and also for breaking down racial disputes in the South African educational system, but also in society in general. As a leading figure within this movement, Hassan is awarded for her ability to be pragmatic and also to use peaceful means. And this is also in times when the students have been met with brutal police violence. In her effort to change a system that favors the white and the privileged, Hassan has proposed concrete economic and political solutions to the policy makers directly. And after prolonged pressure from the student movement, It was a huge victory when former President Jacob Zuma announced that higher education should be free in South Africa. Today, over 50% of the world's population is under the age of 30. And in order to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, the right to education for all will be crucial to ensure sustainable peace and development for future generations. In this perspective, the struggle of Fasiya Hassan and the Fees Must Fall movement has a reach far beyond South Africa and stands as an inspiration for all of us. The Peace Committee hopes that the prize will help to support Fasiya and the student movement in South Africa in their further work for human rights and non-violent struggle for the right to education. We hope that the prize will contribute in strengthening and renewing the solidarity bond between students in Norway and in South Africa, and send a clear message that we stand together in the struggle for fair and equal access to higher education globally. I hope that you are as inspired by Fasiya Hassan as I am, because when she aims higher, dares more, and doesn't give in, I feel a need to try to do the same. And she reminds us of the power of international solidarity, that we, in whatever position we might find ourselves, dare to question authorities, both home and abroad, and that we do what we can to stand together with those who are fighting at the front lines. So this is my humble message to you tonight, as we are gathered here to honor and to celebrate Fasiya Hassan, who is being awarded the Student Peace Prize of 2019. So I guess this is no surprise anymore, but we are so lucky that we are able to get a live conversation with the winner herself from South Africa. She is following us through the live stream. So I'm just going to connect up. Så får man på bilden. Ja. Hey, Fasiya, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Happy congratulations from all of us here in Oslo.
I'm struggling to hear you. The connection is not so great.
Okay. We're trying to get the sound volume up because we can't hear you that well.
Okay, I can hear you guys.
Okay, now we can hear you as well. Great. So I was wondering if you can tell us what did you feel when you got the call hearing that you were going to be awarded the Student Peace Prize of 2019?
I think it's still not a real thing. It doesn't feel. It's very surreal, actually. But as much as it seems to have been awarded to me, I think, it belongs to the movement, and it belongs to every single South African student who's sacrificed in the name of free education. Even now, there are students who are languishing in prison, students who are undergoing the court processes, and students who've even lost their degrees in the fight. And this Student Peace Prize is more for them, and it's more about that fight and about the movement than it is about one person. But yeah, very, very surreal.
So I was also wondering if you can tell us a little bit. I just gave, as you know, a short presentation of you and your work, but I think there are many people here who would like to know more about what are you working on now together with the student movement.
So after the announcement by the President of Free Education there's been a lot of work that we've been doing with government around the implementation and the policy, but ultimately we've also been working a lot around the issue of amnesty for students. I mentioned earlier that there are those who are in prison and those who've been charged, and that's an ongoing process. But right now it's more around ensuring that it actually gets implemented and actually, you know, becomes something that that happens and that works.
And as some closing remarks, is there anything in particular that you would like to share with us here in Norway? And there's a huge crowd of, I think, mainly Norwegian students, but also others who are interested in the work of peace, human rights, and democracy.
So for me, the Student Peace Prize is not just a once-off kind of prize. I think it's something that we need to use to link struggles, to kind of do capacity building between South African students and Norwegian students. And it's something that I really envision a legacy that grows out of this. I think that, you know, South Africa and Norway has always had a very good relationship, especially during the anti-apartheid struggle. And this, for me, is a continuation of that. How can Norway assist South Africa? How can South Africa assist Norway? And so I'm really looking forward to collaboration, and I'm looking forward to something meaningful, not just an announcement and a prize, but something that actually comes out of this that benefits all South African students.
Thank you so much. Thanks for now, and we'll stay in touch. And we're really looking forward to hosting you in Norway next year. So thanks for now.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting everybody.
Yes.
Congratulations on the announcements. I would like to introduce you to the next speaker, Marit Nybakk. She is a politician from the Labour Party of Norway, and she has served as a vice president in the Norwegian parliament. She's also the longest serving female member of the parliament, serving for more than 30 years, also as well as being the longest serving representative at the parliament. She is also the former president of the Nordic Council and Focus, the Norwegian Association for Women's Rights. She has been the previous leader of SAIH, having the current position that Beate Øgård holds right now. In her long career, she has advocated for women's rights, and she has been a fierce advocate for religious freedom. Tonight, she will talk about the winners' fight and cause, the topicality, and the current situation in South Africa. Looking forward to hear what you have to say.
Hello to everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate this very, very much. I think that the anti-apartheid work in Norway in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was probably the most comprehensive and broadest solidarity work ever in Norway. And I think this is right. And I'll come back to this, but it is really something that was so special. And it was also very deeply rooted, even in Parliament. And talking about the Norwegian Parliament, the Norwegian Constitution was written during some busy weeks in 1814, and it's still there. And the Norwegian Parliament was constituted as a part of the constitution established. And all the years after 1814, in every session of Parliament, in every plenary meeting, it was forbidden, at least, or rather established a practice, that neither applause nor loud expressions of disapproval would be tolerated or accepted. There was also, in fact, there still is a list on the presidential table with words that are not tolerated in the parliamentary room. And the Speaker of Parliament, the President, would immediately stop any applause and loud cheers. That was the rule. Nobody had applauded in the Norwegian Parliament until Nelson Mandela entered the VIP gallery lounge. Then the members of Parliament just rose up and applauded spontaneously. So what does that tell us? First, the personal standing of Mr. Mandela, the deep respect, the rooted respect that the Norwegian Parliament and, of course, the Norwegian people had and still have for the South African leader who had been detained on Robben Island for 24 years. But also how deeply rooted the engagement for anti-apartheid work was in Norway at the time, as I said. The disgust for a system where apartheid, racism, was institutionalized in the Republic of South Africa. And for Norway, you know, the equal society, at least a social democratic society, if you like, and I'm not defining social democracy as the Labour Party. I mean, that's something that, I mean, Norway is very social democratic. For this social democratic society, this was really something very, very disgusting and absurd. And secondly, it is important to remember how essential the right to free education for everybody was for the Norwegian labor movement in the beginning of the 20th century, in 1900 and onwards. The local trade unions and labor party groups, or cells if you like, gathered around the kitchen tables to develop their programs and strategies. They had a dream of the right to free education for everyone, for their children and grandchildren. Parliament, and often more than 50% in local municipality assemblies. I was once the leader of the SAIH, as was said, or I usually call it the SAIH. At least when I was abroad. When the SAIH, or SAIH, celebrated the organization's 50th anniversary, the main focus was on the fight for the right to education. Education for liberation was for decades the slogan of SAIH. And it still is after 50 years, and I'm very proud of that. And if we increase the focus upon women, and Norway, of course, has a quota system, not as part of a parliamentary vote, not in the constitution. But several of the political parties have quota systems. So in practice, everybody has at least 40% of their parliamentary group on parliamentary level and also in local municipality assemblies, with one possible exception, that is. And when the SAIH celebrated the organization's 50th anniversary, the main focus was on the fight for the right to education, education for liberation. After 50 years, it was a very good symbolism, though, that the front figure of the Jubilee, on the Jubilee poster and in the advertisements was a female student, challenging many of the worst despots and dictators of the world. And what did she say? Beware. They are educated. They dispute. They debate. They dissent. They rise again to fight for freedom and peace. It's a fantastic poster. I still admire it and have it at home. That was the SAIH poster during the Jubilee year. I was, as was said, the chairperson, or rather president, of the SAIH in the late 70s and the beginning of the 80s. Among our programs and projects were educational material for SWAPO in Namibia. It was the Itiruleng Secondary School in Botswana. And of course, there were many, many scholarships for South African students being refugees in the frontline states, the neighboring countries to South Africa. And even community development programs inside the country. We literally carried money across the borders to South Africa with the help of South African students. And with an increasing focus upon women, we produced a magazine about women in developing countries. And let me quote what we wrote in that magazine. Wherever we look, I'm afraid that we still have to conclude that women are worse off than men in most societies in the world, maybe in all. When we use the spotlight on the conditions of the poorest and we try to channel development assistance to those who need it the most, the women should have the attention. And in the same article, it was said, the women are the basis in many of the poorest countries in the world. This was more than 30 years ago, but it still has a relevance. Then, dear friends, let me pay my respect to and show my admiration and approval for today's Peace Prize winner, as we've just seen. Fasiha Hassan was one of the most prominent leaders of the student movement. Hashtag fees must fall from the very, very beginning. The movement that for the last years have worked very, very hard in order to improve and secure the access to higher education in South Africa. The movement's goal is to break down racism in South African educational system and in society as such. The student protests started with a manifestation against the increased student fees. Now they work with the ANC, the African National Council government, to find a solution for the financing of higher education in South Africa. I came to South Africa for the first time in 1991 to attend the first free Congress of the ANC since the early 60s. Something that I never will forget. The apartheid regime did not like that there was a Norwegian activist coming in to attend that Congress, and they gave me a visa for 3 days. So afraid were they for, anti-apartheid workers in a country like Norway. the Congress was in Durban University, and there are many things to be said. And since we have somebody from the Christian People's Party here, I'd like to tell you the story that I came straight from the blessing of the present King and Queen of Norway in the Nidarosdomen, that is the main cathedral in Trondheim, where a special song or psalm had been written for the royal couple. And it said, "This was the day that the Lord made," or "This is the day that the Lord made." That was the song. It was even played in Nidarosdomen now when they had this. They had a celebration up in the cathedral a few weeks ago. So I came to South Africa, I came to Durban, and I came to the ANC Congress. And as many other liberation movements, the ANC also was very religious, if you see what I mean. And so there was a priest who had a prayer before the Congress started. And what did he read? He read, "This is the day that the Lord made." And yes, that was really the day. The first free Congress of the ANC in South Africa since the 60s. 2 years later, South Africa had its first free elections, and Fasiha Hassan was born that very year. It's symbolic, you know. In 1993, just before the first free and democratic elections, she represents, as was said here, she represents the first generation of the new free South Africa. But her parents had been student activists during the apartheid regime. She therefore learned to engage in social justice and, for example, for the Palestinians. She was very engaged in the Palestinian cause. Among other things, many other things. She became the first student leader of the Student Union for Muslim Students. This is important. She was a woman. She is a woman. And engaged in areas and issues that had been male-dominated. And she has held several positions in the student movement. We heard something about it. And she has been the Secretary General of the Student Council of the Wits University, and she is the Vice Secretary General of the South African Students' Movement Union. And what was originally a fundraising system for students who could not afford to pay the high fees, that is now a work to change of the same system. Fasiha's movement has looked into several models for lower cost in higher education and has done a lot of grassroots works, using the work of the anti-apartheid movement as a model to reach out to the people in the districts. I know that there has been a dispute between the movement about fees or loans or both. And there's a lot I could say about the Norwegian system, but I'm not going to do that. We should remember higher education in South Africa is still dominated by white children, and this is 2018. So Fasiha Hassan has been and is a very, very, very important voice for improvement of the conditions for South African students. Another strong woman in the fight for justice and equality. And let me go back to your Jubilee poster. Beware. They are educated. They dispute. They debate. They dissent. They rise again to fight for freedom and peace. Women are important agents for change in all societies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. It is a privilege to have you here with us today. The next and also the last speaker of tonight will be Kjell Magne Bondevik. Bondevik is the former Prime Minister of Norway, serving for 2 periods. He has fought for democratic freedom, and he is a spokesman for human rights. He's one of the most influential politicians in our time. His political path was influenced by the student movements of 1968, and therefore it is an honor to have him here with us today, celebrating student activism. Bondevik founded the Oslo Center of Peace and Human Rights in 2006. The purpose of the center is to work for world peace, human rights, and interreligious freedom. He will join us tonight to speak about the importance of peace building, human rights, and the ever so important democratic structures. Please welcome Bondevik to the stage.
First of all, congratulations to the 2019 Students' Peace Prize winner, Fasiya Hassan from South Africa. We know about what her country has been through during the last decades. Marit Nybakk mentioned Nelson Mandela. Let me also give you a memory from him. It happened to be so that I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs in 1990. And he came to Norway after having been released from 27 years in prison. And it was my privilege to receive him at the airport outside Oslo, Fornebu at that time. I will never forget it. Because I should go with him in the car from the airport to a hotel very close to the Litteraturhuset here, SAS. And I was thinking that when I should sit beside him in the car for 15 minutes, of course I will be sitting beside a historical man, but I also was thinking that I would sit beside a man full of bitterness and hatred and revenge against the white minority. He had good reasons for that. But what happened? When I talked to him 10-15 minutes, he was only talking about reconciliation and peace, and that he wanted to build up again South Africa together with the white minority. It was unbelievable. It was a fantastic example. This was before he was elected president, that he was some years later. And he did what he said. He appointed as one of the 2 vice presidents the last apartheid regime president, Frederick de Klerk. And he built up again South Africa together with him. He was a shining example of what it means to reconcile, to work for peace and democracy and human rights. Now, the situation in South Africa in many ways is a matter of concern because some of his successor has not managed to follow his example. But we have new expectations now to the new President Ramaphosa, and that he will lead the country in a better way. But also students have played and play today an important role for peace, democracy, and human rights. Another country close to my heart is Myanmar, earlier called Burma. And they lived under a brutal military regime for many years. And as you know, we got an uprising, a revolt against this regime from students back in 1988. And they were called the 88 generation. And they are still active. And Generation 88 and the student movement from that year was important and made it possible for NLD, the National League of Democracy, and Aung San Suu Kyi to play their role later. There are also matters of great concern in Myanmar today, especially with regard to the Rohingyas. But it is also a fact. It has been a real big change. Aung San Suu Kyi is now the civil political leader of the country, but still the military has the last word. But the Student 88 movement is still playing a role, political role. So when I travel to Myanmar from time to time, as I do, I always go to the office of the 88 generation, talk to them, and they are not young students any longer, of course. It is 30 years ago, but they still play a political role, and that's very interesting. Students have power. Because students are well educated, they have networks around the world, and ISFIT is playing a role in this regard, organizing this student festival in Trondheim, where I've had also the honor to participate 1 year. And we know also that it was a student from Burma, from Myanmar, who was the Peace Prize winner some years ago. And then I had the honor to be in the committee for that. It was mentioned 1968. I came here to Oslo as a student in 1967. And the year later, after, was a historical year. Well, most of you were not born. But you have read about it, hopefully. Because then we had very active student movements at universities in Europe, especially in Paris, but also in Germany. And they fought against injustice, against oppression. And they stood up for poor people in other countries, in Africa and Latin America. And the same year, it was an important General Assembly of the World Council of Churches that put these important issues on their agenda in Uppsala, in Sweden. So the 68ers came out of this. It was a student movement, it was the World Council of Churches, and other events taking place. And this had an impact, not only in Europe, but on the whole world. And I was engaged in this debate. Let me mention another very young student of today with great influence, namely Malala, from Pakistan. She started very early to write blogs for BBC about the fight of the right of education for all. We know that some years ago it was 100 million boys and girls did not get any education at all. And that was one of the UN Millennium Development Goals, to reduce that number. And it has succeeded to some extent, because today the number is reduced to around or less than 50 million children. Of course, still it is a huge problem, a challenge. So I think it's included in the new UN development goals, and now there are 17 of them, towards 2030, to reduce this number down to 0. And Malala is playing a fantastic role for this cause. She was blogging for BBC. The Taliban regime at that time in Pakistan was so afraid of her that they tried to kill her. She survived. She was injured. She had to fly to flee to UK, to Birmingham. And I had the privilege of meeting her there a year before she got the Nobel Peace Prize. Invited her to Norway. She came here some months later, and she became very well known here in Norway. I must say, I've never, at that time she was 15 or 16 years, I never met a so intelligent young girl. I'm proud of my grandchildren about the same age, but I must admit, she was the most intelligent I've never, ever met. And how she behaved, she met the Crown Prince, she met the Prime Minister, Speaker of Parliament, and so on. And she behaved like an experienced state leader. It was fantastic. A very young student. She's very eager to study. Now I think she's at the university. And she achieved the Nobel Peace Prize the year after. She visited Norway for the first time. And her work for also compulsory education for all is in full line with our Peace Prize winner here tonight, working for the right of higher education. Thank you that you are awarding this prize every second year. Thank you for what you are doing for peace, democracy, and human rights. Congratulations. Thank you.
Can I get the beat? Yeah. Listen. The right to education must be there in every nation. Commercialization must be faced with condemnation. In some countries and some cities, there's no government subsidies, only high fees. You don't know how tough it is in many universities. Poor students face adversities. Some governments treat students like adversaries. No bursaries in countries like Zimbabwe. Female students selling their bodies in order to get groceries. Privatizing education universally, not just universities. They're privatizing nurseries. This has gotta end. You and me, we gotta take a stand. They be trying to conceal it, not so sure that you can see it, but something wrong with the world. Can you see it? It's right there before you. If you can't see it, let me show you. They say the world is on the brink of war. Of course it is. Can you see how close it is? So many atrocities, always using force it is. Set up with atrocities. Animosity, not enough generosity. All I see is human rights abuses. If you can't, once you lead, tell me what your use is when the government refuses to listen to its people. The only solution is a revolution. So much pollution, greed and entitlement. We don't just kill each other, we're killing the environment. This has gotta end. You and me, we gotta take a stand. They be trying to conceal it, not so sure that you can see it, but something wrong with the world. Can you see it? It's right there before you. If you can't see it, let me show you. Selling slaves in Libya, dropping bombs in Syria. This is getting serious, I read it in the media. Crimes against humanity for power, this is vanity. Cops in the USA, you need to stop brutality. We need a new mentality, there's too many fatalities. Shooting black people, getting off on technicalities. We can do much better. Look, Black Lives Matter. They be trying to conceal it, not so sure that you can see it, but something wrong with the world. Beata, can you see it? It's right there before you. If you can't see it, let me show you. They be trying to conceal it, not so sure that you can see it, but something wrong with the world. Can you see it? It's right there before you. If you can't see it, let me show you. Some people see these problems, they don't worry at all, but it's time for action, don't ignore this clarion call. We cannot be spectators, let's put pressure on details. All the crooked politicians stealing money must fall. Sponsoring war, giving people ammunition. Let us not fight each other, let us fight malnutrition. Let us all get on the mission to reduce carbon emission. We could all save our planet if we plan it. They be trying to conceal it, not so sure that you can see it, but something wrong with the world. So last night I made a resolution that I'm gonna start a revolution.
This is only the beginning of a long journey. The Student Peace Prize will be awarded next year in Trondheim. And this is it for tonight. Thank you all for coming, both students and non-students. I would like to give the last words to Ingeborg and to you.
Thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and a special thanks to our speakers. Can you come up on stage, Siden and Marit? And also a very special thanks to Kajsa for hosting tonight. And thank you, Zach, for the amazing performances. Do you want to come back on stage so we can thank you once more? I would like to once again thank you all for coming, and also invite you to stay here for a little snacks. And you can buy some drinks at the bar. And yes, thank you everyone for tonight. And I'm so looking forward to the 15th of February when we will award Fasiya Hassan the Student Peace Prize. Thank you.